I want to bring in Ben Rhodes to this conversation. I have a million questions. I was listening to you talk to Chris Hayes, and I was thinking, I wish we could talk to Ben, and here you are. So I'm glad you're here. Let me first ask you about what Courtney said about the objective of this statement. I mean, it had been reported, and the president and the White House clearly knew that it was coming. Even if they didn't sign off on it, who knows? We'll see more with the reporting. How do you think the Iranians, you've actually negotiated with them, how do you think they read Secretary Rubio's statement?
I mean, look, the Iranians, on the one hand, have been negotiating with Trump, right? And Steve Witkoff is supposed to fly there this weekend to keep negotiating with them. But on the other end, the Iranians know that the U.S. knows what Israel's going to do before it does something like this. There's no question that the U.S. knew that this was coming. We saw that in the fact that the U.S. withdrew personnel from the region because they saw this was coming, right? And so, the Iranians are probably scratching their heads here because on the one end, they may see that Trump might not have preferred this happen, but also clearly Trump didn't stop this from happening. And so I agree with Courtney. What Trump is trying to do here is to stop the Iranian reprisal from encompassing the U.S. embassy in Baghdad, U.S. military bases in the region, U.S. allies, right? The Iranians, in some scenarios, could shoot at Saudi oil fields, could take shots at Qatar, right? They could really regionalize this war. And I think Trump is trying to kind of take us out of this. But the reality is that leaves us in a position where we are either so weak and so feckless that we couldn't stop a country that we give billions of dollars in military assistance to from bombing another country and potentially starting a regional war, or we were kind of cynically going along with it. Either way, we don't come out of it looking very good.
I mean, to that point, you and I are both very familiar with Prime Minister Netanyahu ignoring what the President of the United States may say at certain times. But Trump, I mean, part of what he ran on and part of what he projected was his close relationship with Prime Minister Netanyahu. And there was reporting, may have been yours, Courtney, you've been reporting a lot. You tell me that he asked them not to do this. And if so, they ignored him. What do you think about that?
Look, if you look at the pattern here, when Trump came into office, there was a ceasefire in Gaza. The war has since escalated horribly in Gaza. And Trump has been saying, you got to wrap this up, and it's not wrapping up. And then Trump said, don't, by all the reporting, including Courtney's good reporting, don't bomb Iran. We're going to do this diplomacy. We prefer to have a nuclear deal. And they've made that preference very clear. And now they've bombed Iran. And so, look, Jen, I mean, I said this to Chris, but for all the problems between our old boss, Barack Obama, and Bibi Netanyahu, we did restrain him from bombing Iran. So something, either Trump is weaker and more incapable of constraining Israel from starting a war that really could draw on the United States. I mean, let's be very clear tonight. We don't know where this is going to go. We don't know how long Israel is going to be conducting these military operations. To Courtney's point, that could involve ground forces, could involve special forces trying to disable parts of the Iranian nuclear program or take out parts of the Iranian brain trust that supports that nuclear program. It could involve, we don't know what Iran's going to do in response. That could start a regional war. And despite that threat to U.S. interest, Donald Trump either had no say over this at all, or he was, lying to everybody and saying that he was trying to secure a nuclear deal. And in either case, it makes the U.S. look a bit ridiculous.
I mean, just to double tap what you just said. I mean, the reason why our former boss, President Obama, and others working in the administration like you was so focused on getting a deal with Iran is to prevent them from acquiring a nuclear weapon and having visibility into what they were doing. I was just discussing this with Senator Adam Schiff. We don't have that now, which we've lost. They were trying to negotiate a version of the deal that they ripped up years ago. I asked Senator Schiff this. Do you think there's any possibility that negotiation continues, or are the Iranians like, not anymore, we're not doing this anymore after this?
I mean, I have to think it's going to be incredibly difficult for the Iranians to come into a negotiation. Look, part of what they've been negotiating are the facilities that got bombed. right? So,
Yeah.
so the whole negotiation would be, do you have any centrifuges at the Natanz facility? Well, that facility's been bombed. Do you have any facilities, any centrifuges at the Gom facility? I would expect that that facility has been targeted as well. So I'm not even sure what would be negotiated. I think the reality of the situation, Jen, is that, look, the first point is that we wouldn't be here if Trump didn't pull out of the original Iran nuclear deal, because that prevented this kind of outcome. It put inspectors on the ground, rolled back that program, gave you an assurance that Iran could not have a breakout capacity for a nuclear weapon. That's the first point. The second point is we don't really understand the timing around what Israel did. Is it because of the fact that the U.S. was conducting nuclear diplomacy with Iran? Well, that's pretty alarming if they were seeking to essentially forestall that diplomacy. Is it because Prime Minister Netanyahu's coalition has been falling apart in Israel? I mean, we should just name that. That's happening. He's had a couple of the key parties in his coalition who've indicated that they want to pull out, essentially, because of certain internal Israeli issues. We've seen Prime Minister Netanyahu escalate in the past when he's politically threatened. Is it because of something else that we don't know about? The Israelis, I think, are putting out that it's because of some imminent weaponization by the Iranians. I'm a little dubious of that. Frankly, the United States has the same intelligence on Iran that Israel does, and we've not heard that from the Trump administration. So I would be sure to kind of verify the claims that come out on this, the timing of this. But the timing of it is extraordinary because it's happening in the middle of a high-stakes negotiation between the United States and Iran. And there's no way to sweep that under the rug, no matter what we're going to hear from Marco Rubio or the Trump administration.